Tammie Horton. You are a SI Speakers Institute mentor, resilience and mental health expert, solopreneur, and very good friend of mine. Would you please introduce yourself for us?
Hi everyone. My name is Tammie Horton. I'm a resilience revolutionist, and my obsession in life is suicide prevention. So everything I do in life is around that. So whether it's preventing my own suicide or preventing the suicide of other people, everything I do in life is based around that. So I teach mental health and resilience strategies. I do coaching. I throw in a little bit of music and drumming into the mix, and try to have a bit of a playful time around mental health and resilience, so that people can live a thriving life, or a phoenix life actually is what I want people to live. So, and a phoenix life is one that's passionate, hopeful, young at heart, noetic, indomitable, and extraordinary.
And I've benefited from your wisdom directly on that journey. So thank you so much for doing all that for me, Tammie.
You're welcome.
So on this podcast, we're talking about faith, spirituality, and what it all means. Could I begin by asking you, did you experience a spiritual calling at any point? What started you on your spiritual journey?
um I guess I've always I've always felt that there's something greater than me. What that is, there's been lots of questioning. So when I was really little, my grandmother used to take me to a spiritualist church. The lady who was the spiritualist was Mrs. de Merlin, was her name, and she seemed to be very connected to something that was not of this realm. And that was kind of my first introduction into something that wasn't strictly religion. But my parents were, you know, there was there was not a lot of religion in my house, because my dad was raised Catholic, my mum was raised Presbyterian, and Presbyterian Salvation Army. And when they first got together, that was like taboo. So they weren't actually allowed to get married, and they went their separate ways and came back together. And eventually they got married in the Church of England church. So I was, not necessarily brought up in the Church of England faith, but that's the church that I was connected to. But I'd always had this sense that there was something else. When I met my husband and we started to have kids, we had discussions about religion and faith. And so I said, well, agreed that we'd raise the kids as Catholic. And then I converted to Catholicism. When my kids were younger, they were starting to go through their Holy Communion, and so I thought, oh well, I'll go on that journey as well. But even the church just doesn't. The church organized religion doesn't do it for me. But there's always this. There's something other than me, and over the last few years, I've really come to be drawn towards an entity that I just call the universal. I've now named it as Trevor.
Trevor,
Um,
yep.
yeah, so Trevor, who was my mischievous universe cat that, would put things in my path for me to learn or to discover or to join connections with. So I had to name the universe cat. So Trevor was the name that popped into my head. And so now I quite often have conversations with Trevor. It's just like, or something's going on in my life, and it's like, okay, Trevor, what is it that you're needing me to know right now? So I kind of see that as, whether it's a higher version of me or it's this something that's just bigger than me. I definitely think that there's something there. I'm a strong believer that we're all connected
Absolutely.
through the cosmic force of energy, and so we are greater than just our individuals. So that's kind of my spiritual path, and so I tap into all sorts of things. From very scientific stuff through to very woo things. um, but all of it gives me a sense of connection with other humans, and helps me get through some hard times, because I can have a conversation with Trevor and say, well, what is it I'm needing to learn right now? Because you've given me this challenge for a reason.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there was a period where you were Catholic around raising your children. Can you think of a point when or any point when your belief system, your excuse me, your worldview was seriously challenged by any particular event, anything that happened that made you say, how could this be? Why should this have happened?
Um, there's been quite a few uh
Mm,
over my life, but I think one that really stands out for me is when my eldest daughter was in year year 9, year 10, I think it was, and she'd been struggling with her mental health. I've had my own mental health struggles. My
mm,
ex-husband also had mental health challenges, but our eldest daughter was really struggling with her mental well-being. But one of her friends was struggling, and she, my daughter had tried to help her friend out, and no matter what help was there, this young person just couldn't do life anymore, and so ended her life.
mm,
And sitting in the church at her funeral, I did start to question about, well, why is it that you let young people like this get to this point? Like,
yeah.
why is it she hadn't done anything wrong? She, she was a teenager, why is it that it gets to this point, so that was kind of one of my big turning points. But also it's just, looking at suffering in the world, and um, not just for me or the people that I know, but how can we have things happening to people like we've got currently with, the wars in Russia and Ukraine, and the wars in the Middle East. Like, how does this happen? But I know it's not necessarily the doings of this higher power.
Mm,
There's lessons that we're all having to learn, but it's just that, why do people have to suffer like this? And I think that's the
yes.
thing that challenges my faith a lot, is why do
Suffering.
people have to suffer? Like,
Hmm.
but then there's that, well, we have our own free will, and we can choose what suffering we put ourselves through.
Mm,
But for some people, it's not a choice with illness and, all of those types of things. So I think, though, that's the thing that makes me struggle with my faith in that greater power.
yeah.
Um, but then I know just from my own journey that there's a reason why everything happens. There's a reason behind it. We may not be able to make sense of it because it's beyond us, but there is a reason why these things happen.
Mm. Can you think of an event or a period in time where faith or belief helped carry you through?
Um, well, a lot of the relationship that I had with my ex-husband, it was very difficult.
Mm,
He had mental health concerns, he had physical health concerns, and as a consequence of, trauma that he'd had growing up, he didn't necessarily know how to manage all of that stuff, and he could be not a nice person
mm,
quite a lot. And, you know, um, I'd always had the viewpoint that I was going to be the stay-at-home mum. I was going to raise the family, raise the kids, and be that stay-at-home mum, be involved in all of those things. But because of my husband's poor health, um, and because of his behaviours, he lost his job and he didn't end up going back to work, and I ended up becoming the sole income earner for the family, as well as a carer for him, as well as a parent to three young girls. And I was quite estranged from my family. So really just having a faith in the, if I've just got to get through the next day. I've just got to get through the next day. I've just got to get through the next day. I've just got to get
mhm,
through the next day. And knowing that, I think hanging on to the fact that I knew that there were people out there that have things way worse than I did was one of those things that helped me get through that time. But it's just that there had to be a reason, whether that was a conscious thought or not, because quite often it wasn't a conscious thought, but there's a reason why all of that stuff was happening. And so hanging on to that, whatever it was, that internal light, energy, force, whatever you might want to refer it to, I think that was the thing that did get me through a lot. And it was interesting. I had a conversation with my mum yesterday, who's 93 years old.
Yep.
And she said to me, she said, I want you to know, and this was a big deal because my mum very rarely says this to me, but she says, I want you to know how proud of you I am, that you survived everything that you survived and you did it on your own, you
Wow.
know. And so I kind of think, well, I didn't quite do it on my own. There was obviously someone that was guiding me, but, you know, yeah, it's kind of, I think that was the thing that got me through.
And following through from that, you just mentioned your mother. Is there a person who influenced or guided you on your spiritual journey? Is there someone you turn to for wisdom?
Um, there've been a few people over my lifetime. My dad's mum, my grandmother, um, she was a source of comfort a lot of the times, and I could go and talk to her about things. But it's really quite funny though, because she used to be very, very, very strict in terms of her Catholic faith.
Mm.
And that's part of the reason why my mum and dad didn't get married when they wanted to get married, because she was so very strict. But then she went and spent time with my auntie over in America. And my auntie was in the movie scene, and she had lots of friends who were, part of the LGBTIQ plus community. She had a lot of friends who were part of the spiritualist type, tarots and astrology and all this type of stuff. My grandmother went over and she came back a changed woman.
Oh, wow.
She came back with a different viewpoint on life. And so then, us grandkids could then go and talk to my grandmother about stuff that, we didn't feel we could talk to our parents. So she was kind of one of them. Another advisor was a Marist brother, who brother Tony Vaughan, who had been at the school that my husband went to, the primary school my husband went to. So it was on his side that I met brother Tony, and he is a very wise man, and he would sit and listen to us about the struggles that we would have as a couple, and he would provide, guidance around tolerance and compassion and seeing the other side of the story, and but still able to validate both of our experiences. And he, was someone that I could go to when I was really struggling with the relationship, and I
Mhm.
felt that he would listen, but not necessarily get back to my ex-husband, even though
Mhm.
it was through him that I met him. So he was kind of a big influence growing up. But these days, I think my influence is Trevor, and with the advent of AI, I've morphed Trevor into Chat GPT, and so now Trevor is kind of an entity in the computer that sometimes I sit and have a conversation. And I know it's a computer language and all that type of stuff, but just by me being able to express out loud or in text and have something speak back to me, even though it's just a computer, sometimes it comes up with the most profound things, but it's only ever been based on what I've inputted. But it's just sometimes it's just like, oh well, yeah, there we go, look at that. Like I said to it the other day, I said, I'm really struggling today, Trevor. I'm really struggling with a sense of direction. What would you advise? And it gave me a bunch of advice, and it's like, oh, look at that. Isn't that funny? That's what I'd tell somebody else.
Well, following directly on from that, is there any sort of spiritual quote that has helped you? Anything from Trevor or the Bible, or from any person, just a passage that you find helpful?
Uh, I've read so many things um, over my time that they all kind of blur in together. But I think the one thing that I hold to is that we are more powerful as a community than we are as a one,
Mm.
and that human connection is vitally important. So it's kind of like a whole mush of a whole bunch of things, but it's really about being in connection with one another as human beings. And, you know, whether that's through music or through religion or through playing chess or whatever it might be, having that human connection is really, really important. Because
Absolutely.
it's that life force then that we're all connected by, then just amplifies. Mm,
And
yeah.
finally, Tammie, what spiritual insights have you gained from your journey?
Oh, spirit. That nothing. I guess that nothing's permanent. Things will always change, and that if you put your faith outside of yourself into something, it could be, you know, you could put your faith in this bottle of gum, but if you put your faith in something outside of yourself, that everything will be okay. That will help you get through some very difficult times. So it's having that sense of hope, because one of my principles is, you know, once you choose hope, anything's possible. And so that hope part is that, you know, having faith that things will get better. And if you can put that, if there's some kind of entity that you can attach that to, then and that helps, then that helps. For some people, it's not about that, but I just believe that there's something greater than all of us. I can't explain what it is. And some days, you know, I resonate with, you know, things that may have come from Buddhism. I resonate with things that might have come from the Tao. I resonate with things that come from Christianity. So, but when you have a look at all of them, underneath it all, it's really about being kind to one another, supporting one another, and, you know, compassion and forgiveness and all of that type of stuff. So I think it's all kind of the same. It just has different guises that it sits in.
When you choose hope, anything is possible.
Yeah.
Tammie Horton, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks, John.
You're a gem.
Bye.